Saludos everybody, welcome back to Decentshirt, where we play cards while we wear decent shirts. And for today's video we have something a little bit fuming. I would say that for today's video we have a very special deck that I've been testing a lot in the last couple of weeks and even months, because I always knew that I loved this deck, but it just didn't have the tools in base set. But now that we have Frostfall, we can see that it's gotten a lot of new, very strong and meta defining cards, and we're talking about none other than Fire. This is going to be my deck profile for our Fire deck. Hope you guys like it. Let's move on to the video. Alright, if this is the first deck profile that you watch of mine, then you will have to know that I always divide this deck profile into two parts. The first part, I just show you the cards without really going into detail of the cards, just so you can take a look at it, make your own impressions, and then take a photo if you want to play with it. And then the second part of the video, which is much longer, is where I go into details of each of the cards, why I run these cards in their counts and such. So having said that, let's just get on to the deck profile. Alright, let's start by showing off the deck. Putting the spirits to the side. Let's begin with our triple Lavalith, triple Kinleo, triple Necroth, triple Astrabbit, 2 Elishik, 2 Small Tuga, triple Hephaestus, 2 Ambrosias, triple Earthquake, 2 Volcanic Forge, 1 Nectar of Harmonia, 3 Gorgon's Gases, 3 Shields of Achilles, 2 Poison Tipped Arrows, 2 Chains of Prometheus, and lastly 3 Tsunamis. As for the spirits in the spirit deck, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Vipyros, 4 Taratlas, 3 Leviathans, and 3 Scepters. So, starting off with the star of the show, we got Lavalith. And Lavalith is widely considered to be the best card out of Frostfall, which is the newest set. And it's for good reason. Lavalith single-handedly, well, him and another card that we're going to discuss later on, basically put fire decks in the map because of its ability to be able to normal cast on command, basically. If your opponent has 2 or more enchanted spirits than you do, then you can normal cast Lavalith. And basically it got the resting on your laurels treatment, but in a cast for an Elestral. But it doesn't end there, right? It does boast 6 attack, which is great to beat over things such as Viserys and a lot of the 5 stat that many people were clamoring to be like the pedestal of beating over Elestrals. But we also now have the effect that when it's cast, you can target and destroy runes. So this is a card that is going to be very impactful in the metagame for many reasons, not just in fire. And it's due to this, to the fact that it can destroy a rune. We've discussed in the channel before the fact that Elestrals that are able to destroy runes have a lot of value, because normally that means that you're able to not only destroy a rune, which is great, right? We don't have to talk about how good that is, but also the fact that you have the potential of treating this as a 2-for-1 in theory. right? Because if Lavalith is able to destroy a rune that is not being able to be casted, like for example, a Shield of Achilles, then suddenly Lavalith can then try to swing, right? I'm assuming that you're going to try to swing with the Lavalith. That means that your opponent is going to be, let's say, endorsed to try to stop the Lavalith, and that could probably proc the second rune in the back row. So Lavalith has a lot of value, similar to that of an Equalings, where you're able to threaten KOs, but at the same time you're able to threaten the back row, and it forces the opponent to really expend additional cards to this, right? The biggest detriment of Lavalith, it starts like hitting Tsunami or even a PTA, because they can just cast their PTA or their Tsunamis and then you don't get that much value. But still, a strong card in this deck, and even stronger in the meta. So that's why we're running 3 of them. Definitely one of the best comeback cards so we have currently in the game. But it doesn't end there, because we do run 3 Kinleo. And Kinleo is a card that always had a lot of potential, even in base set. However, it didn't really have the tools in base set for it to really take off. It boasts a very underwhelming 3 attack and 1 defense, so it's very easy to run over Kinleo, and that was the main reason why Kinleo didn't really see that much play, because fire wasn't a really good archetype, and even though Kinleo we're going to see it has a really good effect, it really failed to stick around for many turns. So Kinleo does have the effect that you can Nexus up to 2 fire, and when you do, target and destroy an Celestial. I don't need to tell you that this is a really strong effect, not only because you're Nexusing, this is the Nexus Fire, the Fire Nexus that we're running in this deck, but also the idea that you can pop a Celestial before you attack is really strong. It's the value of an Earthquake, but in a Nexus ability, right? Which is really strong. And these two are what make and break the deck in theory, because Kinleo has a way to destroy Elestrals and Lavalith has a way to destroy the back row. So it has something that almost no other deck can say that they really do have, like at least as in archetype. The closest you could say is Earth Beaters with Equalings and Earthquake. But yeah, essentially this is it's basically like a reverse, right? 2 costs for destroying runes and a 1 cost to destroy, in theory, Elestrals. Anyhow, these are the 2 crux of the deck. You really just want to see as many as possible from these cards, and most of the time you're going to be searching for the Kinleo, because Lavalith is not really searchable right now. Hopefully in the future we will see cards that are able to search out the Lavalith, which will just put this deck even further along. Okay, so here is where this deck is going to probably meet some sort of criticism or even controversy, and that is that instead of running the Kamagma, which is a really good card and one of the reasons why Kinleo is a lot better now, because you actually had a good receive effect, I decided that instead of running the Kamagma, which is a good draw engine, I wanted to play Necrof because I wanted the extra eating aspect of it. Also, the burn aspect, it really does come in handy from time to time, especially to close out games when everybody's used their resources. Suddenly the Necrof can hit and get that additional spirit. It really does come a long way. For those that don't know, Necrof, when it destroys an Celestial, you can make the opponent expend 1 additional spirit, and that's where the burn aspect comes from. The main reason why I wanted it was mainly because it's a 5 attacker, and this deck, while it does have Lavalith, the Kinleo, which is the other Celestial, doesn't really boast much offensive presence, so Necrof does basically redeem that quality, and Kamagma didn't do it for me, right? Kamagma is really good at drawing and discarding, but Necrof really sold me on the fact that it could actually go head to head with other Elestrals currently in the format. We also do have 3 Ash Rabbits, I go back and forth whether I should run 2 Astravets and 3 Elisheks, but in this case I decided to run 3 Astravets because this deck does have the ways to come back, but it needs to draw those cards, and Astravet is a great card to start with to play on the defensive. Also, it generates a lot of value if it's able to stick on the board for more than one turn, and just in general it's a good way to filter through your cards, make sure that you have the winning plays and you have enough resources in your hand to combat whatever your opponent has in store. So as I said, we're running 3 Astravets, so that means that we are running 2 Elisheks. Other lists run 3, I decide to run 2. Some people decide to cut the Hephaestus package entirely and do not even run the Elishek. I personally really like the Hephaestus engine due to things that we're going to discuss later on. But if you don't know what Elishek does, it's a 4/1 that when you normal cast it, you are able to search for a divine rune. So it's going to be your search for your Hephaestus. Lastly, we are running 2 small Tuga. I don't think we need to run more than 2. We're not really running Galaxy in this deck, so 2 is more than enough. It does boast a 5 defense similar to the Astravet, which is a good thing. And when it's normal cast, you are able to search for any 1 fire 1 cost in your deck and add it to your hand. So that means that you're able to search for your Kinleos, and if you need to be a little bit more aggressive and don't quite have the cards to abuse Kinleo, then you can search for the Necroth to be a little bit more aggro. Alright, that's all the Elestrals. Let's go on to our runes, and I am deciding to play 3 Hephaestus. Not very common for you to really run 3 of Hephaestus. Hephaestus is not really considered one of the better cards in terms of the divine runes. It's actually I would say that's probably considered the worst out of the initial 5 and even the 6. However, Hephaestus is what enables your Kinleo plays, and while I know that there's a version that runs Volcanic Forge instead of the Hephaestus line, I much prefer to have both options available and just have the Hephaestus be that sponge that leaves basically creates the spirits on board so that Kinleo can abuse it. And we do have an actual target for Hephaestus. Normally we don't get to see that many in Hephaestus deck, well, not Hephaestus, in fire decks, but I do run 1 target, so it does come up, and that's one of the reasons why I do run the 3 Hephaestus. Then moving forward, we do have 2 Ambrosias. I go back and forth whether running 3 or 2, but I do think that 2 is fine in this deck. We don't have a lot of recyclability, but at the very least we do have like a Nexus engine in the deck with the Kinleo. So basically Ambrosia is just to recuperate those spirits that you may need towards the late game. You know, it's a really good card, everybody uses it. I'm just running 2 instead of 3. We do run 3 Earthquakes. I do add the additional spirits of Earthquakes because it's just a really solid card to run over things. It's very fun to play the Lavalith, destroy a rune, and then go and activate Earthquake and get over the whatever they had that had 2 spirits in. So it's really fun. And even though we do have the Kinleo, Earthquake is never a bad option. We do have 2 Volcanic Forge, as I hinted at the start or during the video. Essentially, I do like having both options of Hephaestus and Volcanic Forge. Worst case scenario, we can just activate Volcanic Forge and Kinleo and move around. But I do like having the boost, a Lavalith that has 8 attack, a Kinleo that has 4 or even 5 attack if we move spirits around, and even a Necroth with 6 attack does go a long way in this deck, and that's why I'm running 2 Volcanic Forge. Earlier I said that I did run a search target with the Hephaestus, and that search target is Necklace of Harmonia. That's probably another controversial card. Many people consider this one of the worst artifacts, if not the worst artifact. However, I think that this has a lot of untapped potential. If you don't know what it does, I don't blame you. It's a card that I've been experimenting from base set towards now, but it's not really seen all that big results. But still, Necklace of Harmonia says that the Empower Celestial gets +5 attack. Now this 5 attack boost does come with a big detriment, which is the fact that during the end phase, the controller of the Empower Celestial must expend 2. If they cannot, this Necklace of Harmonia is destroyed. This is not a if you want to effect, it's you must effect. So that means that if you are going to play Necklace of Harmonia, just know that you're burning yourself for 2 every single time. So again, it's a card that you have to know how to use it. You have to know when to use it. It's a card that can swing games because it's not a card that people usually protect or are expecting. Suddenly, your Lavalith can hit the 11 mark with the Lavalith, right? With the Necklace of Harmonia. And if you even have 2 more Fire Spirits, then you're hitting 13, which I don't know why you would want to hit that number right now, but you know, that's an option as well. You also have it as a way to raise the attack of Necroth, raise the attack of Kinleos, in general, any other Celestial, right? That you might need to really swing for a KO that turn. Another reason why Necklace of Harmonia I think is very underrated is because even if you don't want to use this effect, you could just Nexus. You could Nexus around from the Necklace of Harmonia. You can search out the Hephaestus, play Necklace of Harmonia, and then you can pass the spirits with Kinleo. That's another option that you can do. Or you could also, in theory, cast a Necklace of Harmonia with other spirits, so you don't have to use your fire. If you're very depleted in your fire spirits, then you are able to use the Necklace of Harmonia to really buff up, and I think it's a better option than Hammer of Hephaestus, which really asks you to have a lot of runes in play. So I know that one's gonna be a little bit controversial, but I think that it's worth experimenting on. I do have our 3 Gorgons. It's basically a mandatory 3 of. Best card in the game if you ask me, really strong, and I don't really need to go into much detail about what it does and why it's there. So I'm just gonna have the 3 Gorgons, 3 Shields of Achilles. Shields of Achilles, again, it's a protection. You do have Kinleo, only has 3 attack, so Shield of Achilles is gonna be a really strong card. I do prefer running 3 Shields of Achilles over 3 PTAs because again, it provides that protection that sometimes you're really needing. We do have 2 PTAs. I'm only running 2. You could run 3 and then lower the Shield of Achilles count, but I think 2 is fine. It's good for defensive decks such as Drataya, Fruit decks, and even Locagon decks. It's really good against those kind of decks, which are very prevalent now. However, I find myself that I do have enough destruction or celestial removal currently in the deck. We do have our 3 Earthquakes, and we do have our Kinleos. We do have a lot of ways to put Fire Spirits on the board, so 2 PTAs seem just about right. I don't think we needed more than 2. Lastly, well, we do have 2 more runes. Okay, we do have Chains of Prometheus, and this is one of the other premier cards of Frostfall. This card helps fire decks immensely because it's almost like an archetype card. If you don't know what it does, it's a counter rune that activates for 2 fire, which is perfect for this deck, and can only be cast when an opponent activates a counter rune. But when you do, negate that rune, and the opponent returns 1 spirit from their underworld to the spirit deck, so you're able to negate counter runes. Excellent card. It's a card that helps you push plays with the Lavalith, helps you push plays with the Necroth, and even with the Kinleo, which is the one that receives the most attention usually, with the Gorgons and whatnot, you can choose the Chains of Prometheus, and then you can protect your Kinleo so it is able to get its effect off. Lastly, we are running 3 Tsunamis. Some people run only 2. I think we're running the Small Tuga, so it's worth running 3. Sometimes you are able to go with the Small Tuga and use the spirit in the Small Tuga to protect the rest of your board. If the Small Tuga stays for more than 1 or 2 turns, it's a really good option, so that way you don't exhaust your spirit deck as easily. So it's a really good card, one of the best defensive cards in the game, and even though Locagon is very popular right now, which is to his detriment, it's still a very solid card that helps you against the rest of the meta. So definitely worth an inclusion. Definitely wanting 3 of. Now let's talk about the spirit count to finish the video. We do have 10 fire spirits, or 10 by pyros. The reason why we're running 10 is because we do need to make space for all the other side engines that we're adding, so that the deck is a consistent. Since we're not running Kamagma, we don't really have much draw. We're not running Nectar of Gods, so Ash Raven and Elishik provide that additional searchability that add to the consistency of this deck, but that does mean that we're losing some of the fire spirits. That being said, since we are a sort of comeback deck with Lavalith and Kinleo, you do move around your spirits a lot. We don't tend to misuse our spirits all that often. I wouldn't consider this a super expensive deck. I think it's pretty average in terms of that. We do have 3 Scepters. We run 3 Scepters because essentially we are running the Thunder package of the 3 Elishik, 3 Ash Rabbit and 2 Elishik, and this is more than enough. If you ever need to use your Ash Rabbits, you can comfortably go for the second Ash Rabbit, while knowing that you do have a 3rd Thunder Spirit for either an additional Ash Rabbit or just for the Elishik to search out your Hephaestus. So it's really nice to know that you do have a 3rd Spirit. We do run 3 Leviathans. We are running Smoltuga and we are running 3 Tsunamis, so it's only fair that we run 3 Leviathans. You could, in theory, lower this to a 2 count and add an additional Fire Spirit, but I don't think it's really all that necessary. In worst case scenario, you can just use these as a enchantment to go over Tsunamis, which is still a very powerful and very popular card. Lastly, we do have our 4 Terratlas for our Earthquake count. You don't need more than 4 because in theory you're not really going to see more than 2 Earthquakes in a game. It's really weird, and in worst case scenario you do have your Ambrosias to recover it. That being said, you do have enough destruction on the deck, like the Celestial Destruction, that Earthquakes is just like an additional card so you can push for game and such. So guys, that was my deck profile for my fire deck. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please make sure to write them down in the comments below. Write your observations, and even if you have critiques of the deck, by all means go write them in the comments. I'll be glad to see what is the consensus on this build. This build is definitely it's a different build, I would say. It still has most of the cards that you would see in a fire deck, but at the same time it decides to play in a different way, I would say. I think the Necklace of Harmonia and choosing to play the Hephaestus is something that I think could be experimented on a little bit more. Having said that, I do think that with the cards that have been revealed for Daybreak, once they arrive, this build is going to be a lot stronger, because Hephaestus will be able to search out for cards like Golden Fleece, and Golden Fleece will just add protection to this deck, which is something that this deck will gladly appreciate. We also can expect further on, right, cards that could synergize, right? I hope that we see cards that synergize with fire and solar, so we do have other things. In theory, could even scrap our Thunder package and run the new lucky card, the Plucky card, which can search out the Hephaestus as well, so you do have like the option of going for a solar package instead of a Thunder package and still run the Hephaestus. So having said that, I'm gonna leave it there. I hope that you guys enjoyed the video. Please like, please subscribe if you haven't already. We're trying to reach our 50 subscriber mark, and we cannot do that unless you guys subscribe. So I really hope that you guys will stick around, will watch more of the videos, and in general just be here. So having said that, Decentshirt signing out.